we've basically manipulated the genetics of the chicken over time, manipulated the feed over time, where the main chicken that 99% of people eat, Cornish cross is the breed, will die if you don't give it corn and soy. But this breed of chicken has these two things that no one knows about. Woody breast syndrome. It's called woody breast syndrome. The breast turns into fibrous tissue that's actually not even digestible protein. You're not digesting any of that because it's weird fibrous connective tissue it's like cross-linked together. You can't break it down. And then there's another thing called white striping disease that affects 90+% of these birds that you'll see it in the fat when you have a chicken carcass. It's like white streaks. This isn't just the fat. This is a disease that the chickens have that we're just eating.
What's up, friends? Welcome back to The Best Medicine. It's Angie. Today we chat with Dr. Anthony Gustin. He is the founder of PerfectKeto and Equip Foods. He is the host of the Natural State podcast, author of the best-selling book Keto Answers, and he's a former sports rehab clinician turned entrepreneur and amateur farmer. Hold on. What is an amateur farmer? Is there an MLF, a minor league farming club industry? What's the difference between an amateur farmer and a professional farmer? Is professional farming when you get paid to sell your food, Welcome to my brain. Anyways, Anthony is trained in functional medicine, and he is honestly one of the smartest humans I know when it comes to nutrition and wellness. If you haven't checked out his Instagram yet, it is filled with gold. It is so good. He talks a lot about achieving a natural state in this modern crazy world we live in, big food companies and how they lie to us and, get us to eat this crap. So go check him out on Instagram at Dr. Anthony Gustin. Today we dive deep into the food industry, chicken, the meat industry, how PUFAs are basically the worst thing in the world for us, these polyunsaturated fats, these toxic seed oils, and oat milk. So if you love oat milk and you love your canola oil, you might not like us by the end of this episode, but we're here to give you the truth, my friend. We're here to give you the truth. So we dive into mistakes you might be making with the keto diet or the carnivore diet, carbs, healthy fats, what should we be eating? I mean, you name it, we dive into it in this episode. It's really juicy, so this is one you might want to play back over again. And again, if you haven't checked out Anthony on social, check him out at Dr. Anthony Gustin. Come say hi to us at The Best Med Podcast and at Angie Lee Show and at Official Mike Lee. Woo! That's a lot of handles. And as always, the code for Soul, so you can save some moolah on Soul, is TBM. So just use the code TBM at checkout at My Soul CBD to stock up on any of our incredible products. And let's dive into today's episode. Let's talk about nutrition. If you eat enough PUFAs, you will get a FUPA.
Right.
Yeah.
There
Actually, research shows.
We have a doctor
an
here.
extensive FUPA study.
99% chance.
Yeah. Exactly.
99% chance. And I don't want a FUPA, so I'm going to stay away from seed oils.
I think some people do now, though.
They do what?
Yeah, they do. They
Wait,
they
what
have
do you mean
role
they
models like Lizzo out there saying that
yeah.
this is the goal.
I mean, this is controversial, but let's go there. Why not?
Yeah.
It's interesting
Let's start it
because
off.
it's one.
Let's get
it's
rolling.
It's one thing to be a few pounds over your healthy weight, and it's one thing to, but at that point, yeah, she's her organs are not okay, and it's interesting that women think this is fine to celebrate when she's not. Her health is not okay.
Anyone's
Right?
health on their own individual is their responsibility and
Yeah.
their prerogative. And if they want to be ultra obese, that's great.
Yeah.
I have no problem with that.
Mhm.
But it's the promotion of it as healthy
Mhm.
that is insane. Like I got
And Health Magazine, yeah.
I got like semi-canceled last year when I reposted this thing that many people in the health industry were just like, what the hell is going on here? When Cosmopolitan issued a couple different issues where it was women who were probably like 300 plus pounds and saying, literally the cover said, this is healthy.
Yeah.
And again, it's great if they're working out and if they're active and if they are whatever a healthy lifestyle means to them.
Yeah.
It is objectively not healthy for the human organism to be that weight.
Yeah.
Period. And that's just the way it is.
But
Yeah.
this kind of leads to one
You're
thing
screwed,
I
Mike.
wanted to, I'm screwed. One thing that I wanted to talk to you about. I love the content on Instagram and everything you're putting out. Super informative. I think it's really cool to see you put out all this information, this data, especially around meat. One of my biggest questions I wanted to ask you was, why is meat being demonized right now? And should people be eating more meat in their diet, right?
Ooh, starting with meat.
Okay. So why meat is being demonized is
Yeah.
such a complicated thing that I've been actually trying to pull apart. I think to understand where we should go and how to solve the problem, you have to understand why we got here in the first place. And man, that's a tricky one because there's an infinite amount of reasons why we're here now. And I think mostly why we're in the current climate is because meat is a commodity and it's not profitable.
Mm,
That's the single biggest reason.
sure.
Looking at some of my friends who have meat companies, they're running on like 1% margins, 1 to 3.
Darn it.
And we could chat about why it's a commodity and all this type of stuff. And I think that we can chat about why or how I think there's some solutions can come. It's like, for example, coffee and chocolate and some of these other industries used to be commodified as well. And then we launched a premium end and had like third wave coffee shops, stuff like this that made producers who are doing things right. They give them ability to actually make a profit from things and sort of change the industry. I think we could do that with meat. But overall, right now, we have this entire push towards plant-based eating. And the narrative is that it's way healthier, it's better for the climate,
Hmm.
and it's more morally responsible. Those are the 3 big claims of why you should eat a plant-based diet and why you should not support animal agriculture.
Yeah.
And we could dive into each one of those specifically because I think that each one of those has specific history. And then also, I frankly think that they're ridiculous and wrong
Yeah.
for a variety of reasons. But that's kind of how I view it as like those 3 buckets. And
Okay.
the companies that are pushing now the science and the information around how plant-based diets are healthy, better for the climate, or more morally responsible, ironically, are funded now with the most amount of money and have the margins on their product to be able to invest in the marketing to do things.
Yeah.
And so just like we had through the last 100 years, what people know is like big food. So you have a couple companies. Basically, there's like 5 companies right now that own all processed food, the stuff at a typical grocery store, you walk in the aisles and you see. They have had enormous margins to keep pushing. I'm sure you guys have seen like ridiculous ads from the 20s even through now of
Oh yeah.
just insane propaganda of why things were healthier back then and even through now. You turn on a cartoon for a kid if there's still commercials on, if they're not streaming it. It is insane how they've shifted this marketing around for kids, for adults, everything, to brainwash people into thinking that these things are good for them. The Beyond Meats, Impossibles, Oatleys, etc., are what I call new big food. It's the same concept, but it's just a new iteration of it. So they're hiding under this veil of better for you, better for the planet.
Yeah.
But they're funded the same way. So they're funded by these enormous companies. They have hundreds of millions of dollars in funding, if not public companies that have access to billions of dollars of capital. Insane margins to be able to push this narrative. I was traveling internationally end of last year and just seeing the amount of advertising that Oatly had, literally in every European city,
Wow.
large or small, was insane.
Oat
And-
milk, right? The oat
yeah,
milk.
Yeah,
Mhm.
Oatly oat
Yeah.
milk, which we can get into why I think this is just absolute trash
Yeah.
sludge, but it just goes to show like they can do that. That costs money. I think people who don't own businesses don't realize the stuff you see all the time in your attention costs money. It isn't free to do. And so if you ask the question, okay, where does this money come from? It comes from, again, the high margins in processing food and selling it in a package. And right now, there's no option for farmers to really do that. They, like, even pricing out stuff for my own farm, thinking like, okay, should I sell this to consumers? Like, how does the business model of an actual farm work from a small scale all the way to a large scale farming operation? Again, margins are 1 to 5%, maybe.
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe.
So what do you say to kind of the everyday person that maybe they can't shop at Erewhon or they want to go to Whole Foods, but I think we're talking about money right now,
Yeah.
right? Do you think it's a fallacy that you need money and you need to be rich to eat healthy? Are there ways when you show up at the grocery store that you can watch your wallet and also not be eating into and buying into all the shit that you just talked about?
100%. There's tons of ways to do that. I think before you even chat about that, though, I think there's to have a framework to understand, is meat good or bad? Why? What's going on? What should I buy? I think people are just so confused. They don't really have a paradigm to think through.
Mhm.
And I think that the paleo sort of concept gave people at least some sort of a an awareness of like, okay, did your grandmother or your great grandmother have the chance to eat this thing? If not, maybe you shouldn't eat it. Or like, did our ancestors grow up eating this thing? I think to take that a little further, the way I think about it is any organism in its natural environment ends up in its natural state, which I call health. And so we manage health now in like our modern society as something that needs to an objectified state that needs to be reached. You need to do things to be healthy. And
Sure.
if we're in a natural environment, we see this throughout the rest of every other thing that lives.
Yeah.
Any other thing that has DNA has a natural environment. And in that natural environment, that has a natural expression of its genetics, which is the state of health.
Thrives.
Right. And so if we take an acorn and plant it in the soil, and that soil has the right nutrients and the right temperature, it goes into an oak tree. If I have it here next to me, what is that acorn going to do?
Nothing.
No, nothing, of course.
Not grow.
If I even am looking out in a city where a chipmunk, it's not a natural environment. But still, it's generally speaking, like it looks like a normal chipmunk, right?
Yeah.
If I take that and put it inside and feed it a bunch of weird stuff, or even a rat or like a research study mouse, they get agitated, they get disease ridden, they get obese, just like humans.
Mm-hmm.
But what I think people don't realize is that the abnormal state is from the abnormal environment, but that's a normal expression, if that makes sense. So if you are in an artificial environment, you should expect an artificial state, which would be disease in this instance, or obesity, or other physical health conditions. And what I'm more interested in recently is mental health conditions.
Mm-hmm.
The same thing of like, we just don't have a paradigm to think of like, what is a normal human experience and what is a normal human state? And this is why the obesity thing pisses me off so much, is because we're now throwing away the model of even what we should be aiming for.
Yeah.
Which is important.
Yeah.
Because we should understand, like, okay, if I have these genetics and I have this body that I'm
Sure.
inhabiting,
Sure.
what is the model in which I should sort of aim for my full genetic expression?
Right.
Wow, I love it. I love thinking of it like that. Like we're just these organisms and we need to thrive. So if we're taken out of our fish tank or insert in any of, insert the environment it needs to be in, we don't thrive.
But that's also the reality of the world right now too, right? So like not everybody can go into the woods and, forage for themselves, right? So it's kind of like, how do we mitigate that, or how do we meet in the middle and start to make good choices, even though humans never again will be in their natural history, the way that technology and medicine and everything is going. We're not going to, probably not going to revert backwards, right? So it's like, as we sit here today in 2022, I couldn't agree with you more. We have like mental health issues, we have obesity, we have disease for all these reasons that you're saying, but for kind of the everyday person, what do they do, or what are some like really key important things that maybe you live your life by that are important practices that are kind of like the foundation of health that you can do while you're living in a modern world?
Yeah, I mean, I think the point is to live in the modern world, but have this natural environment be recreated as much as possible. But you have to understand what that natural environment is first, and what the natural state health should be. And I think we're running out of examples, which is why I went to Africa last year to see like, okay, what is one group of humans that are still living in this way for the last 50,000+ years? How are they living? I think it's interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't think there's any way like even their way of life is going to be over the next generation.
Wow.
There's only like 7 or 8 different groups like this left. And within the next 50 years, they're all going to be gone. So
Tell me about that trip, Tanzania. It's fascinating. What was the reason for going over there, or else, and how have you kind of changed your views, if you have at all, since that experience?
Did you eat monkey liver or monkey?
Baboon.
You ate a monkey? Oh.
Baboon liver and brain and face and hand and full nose to tail experience.
You ate a baboon's like whole body?
Yes.
Like grilled on a
Fire.
kill it and on the fire?
Fire.
Wow, that's primal.
Yeah, we hunted it and stabbed it with a knife. It was a very intense experience.
What was the motivation for this?
Monkey.
So
High protein.
again, there's this concept that I have. Okay, then what's a natural state? What's a natural environment?
Mhm.
I obviously know what the abnormal state and the abnormal environment is. We're living it daily in cities all the time. So wanted to go see this, and I think that I've had this kind of romanticized idea of it, of how these people live from all this other research that I've done, ancestral sort of interest. And I think that their environment was about what I expected. But the model, again, of their natural state of what is a healthy human was much different for me, but not from a physical health standpoint. That was what I expected. People were very lean, had high amounts of energy, you know, great joint. Like I actually took some through a little bit of movement assessment, as that's more of my like clinical experience. And what was most surprising was the model I had from their mental and emotional health, which is not something that is never talked about when it's coming to like the whole paleo primal ancestral sort of paradigm. But it's normal because it's an expression again of our genetics and our capabilities, humans and our bodies and our minds. So that was super fascinating. These people were the happiest people I've ever spent time with in my entire life, for
Wow.
sure.
Their level of fulfillment and contentment was
Yeah. There was zero worry about anything, and there was an enormous amount of abundance, even though their land is being flanked by all of these pastoralists and development and all this type of stuff, and their land is shrinking dramatically year over year. And so, for example, they used to be able to go and hunt a giant like kudu antelope within a kilometer of their camp.
Hmm.
But now they have to hike 20 miles, which we did, to get a baboon to feed 20 plus people.
Mm.
And so their way of living is like I would be worried if I were them,
but they're not worried.
but they're not worried at all. They seem to have the most amount of abundance mindset I've ever seen of any other humans. And their level of balance between leisure and connection and playfulness, it's sort of out of a fairy tale.
Wow.
And it wasn't a show because there's some people who come and see these tribes for like 15 minutes. We were embedded with them for over a week. So like we were doing every single thing all day long with them for that long. They're not faking it after that long of a time. Like we got to like actually create some relationships with these people. And yeah, that's what stood out to me more, was having more of a model of how sick we are emotionally and mentally.
Mm-hmm.
And you start digging into some of this stuff that's becoming more popular now around trauma and mental health and emotional health. But now having this model of, oh, this is what it should be. Because you can't really, it's easy to see photos of people, and like physical health is really easy to quantify, both qualitatively and actual, like, literally with lab markers, things like that. With emotional and mental health, it's very difficult until you actually experience a thing with somebody and see the amount of respect that they have for each other and the connection they have with each other, but also the respect they had towards us.
Yeah.
And for example, like they did COVID impacted them somewhat because they are dependent now somewhat on people coming and trading with them and doing some stuff. So like to get some hunting things, they need to have traders from the outside come in and they trade stuff and get goods. And they had a reduced amount of that. So they were having a hard time with some stuff. So they had every day they did like a ritual and a prayer and a song for everybody who's been affected by COVID and for it all at large. But it was like such an authentic experience for them. And like the how the community worked together.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of the biggest things that like it's coming back around, living in Austin. We have all these, I'm sure you guys have tons of friends who dream of starting a commune out in the woods.
Tribal living, community.
Co-living, co-housing, whatever.
Yeah.
And I
It's
get
important.
it's great to have that perspective. I haven't seen any models really be good examples in the modern world, but to see it truly happen as humans have done it in the past, not saying that's the only model how they live, the Hadza tribe, but seeing a model that has worked and works for them and has worked for them for the last 50,000+ years was fascinating.
Yeah.
And another taboo thing to talk about with them is just like how gender roles worked. Men and women, very different. Roles, very different. Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Very much separate.
Yeah.
It's something that, again, if there is any gender role now, like if you speak about it, like this is already probably getting me in hot water, so you probably should edit this part out. But
no.
It's just, there's so many of these things like this that have become taboo now.
Like, what did the men do probably so many differences, but just what, like the daily to-dos, like the work and what the men did and the women did, right? As far as like taking care of the community and nurturing the home. And then the men were out getting the meat. Like, was that very evident?
Very much like what you would expect.
The traditional
Yeah.
male-female roles?
Men are hunters.
Yeah.
They start the fire. They make the weapons.
Nice.
They talk a bunch of shit and they joke around a bunch like good old boys would. And women obviously taking care of the camp, more like foraging around camp. Like when went on one day like digging roots with them, roots and tubers and things like that, which is super interesting. Obviously taking care of the children,
Yeah.
but they each had this ultimate respect for each other. And we had an interpreter there and just chatting with them around. They couldn't do it without the other ones, but understood that each had their own role.
That's the key.
That's really
Yeah.
beautiful. Roles are
It
important in
is.
society, especially with gender. So
Yeah.
that's great. I think it's now seen as weird to say or traditional, but I still believe that's really important in some aspects. It's really healthy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
just it's a lot
That's
to
so
just say that,
cool.
like I think that their organization of the society and how they live together
Mm.
and their mental and emotional health was a really good model for me. And that's sort of what's changed about my perspective of like, okay, that's something to shoot for. Not to say I want to try to recreate and like recruit 40 people to go live on my farm with me and just I don't think it's possible, like you said. Like we
Yeah.
can't rewind the tape.
I'm in.
Yeah.
But
Well, she's in.
I'm in.
Yeah.
I
You're
wanna
not
live
even.
off the
You're not even
grid.
invited. But
I
all right.
want to just pick berries all
Drop a
day
pin. Let me know where to
and
go.
forage.
Duh.
And you make the what does the guy do? Oh, you make all the
I'll
the
hunt
knives and
bamboo,
shit and go get the food.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll just forage the berries.
All right. Perfect.
Let's go.
I've seen
Fabulous.
some baboons out in Bastrop. Actually, we'll be able to.
I mean, well, first of all,
Really?
those things are dangerous.
They're
like,
vicious. Yeah,
yeah.
they're terrifying.
Did you have a stick, a knife? What type of weapon did you have on you?
We didn't have anything. We were just running around behind these guys.
I
I have
was-
videos of it. I could send you guys afterwards.
You weren't like, hey, maybe I can get a knife here. You were like, I mean, I'd be like, give me something in case this thing comes
after
for
the
me.
hunt. I would have requested a knife had I known how aggressive it was, for sure.
Wow.
These things are wild, and the teeth on them are crazy.
Yeah.
What does it taste like?
Nothing.
Like chicken?
Yeah,
Like
I
grilled
mean,
chicken?
neutral meat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
High protein, right?
yeah, it's great.
High fat, high
Lean.
protein.
What is your diet like right now?
A lot of animal products,
Okay.
which I also don't subscribe to like everyone needs to eat tons of animal products. And so going back to the initial
Yeah.
question of
Yeah.
should we be eating meat? Should we be
Right.
eating more
It's
meat?
a very broad question. I know.
I think that humans should likely eat some animal source given the amount of nutrition we get from them that we cannot get from plants.
Okay.
But I think that overall, there's a spectrum of diet that works for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's some fundamentals you can't really argue, which is like eat things that spoil. So if it's out on my countertop and I can still eat it in 2 weeks, it's probably not food.
Mm.
So
I like that.
Kind of a simple thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and then within that, your sort of combination of plants, fruits, vegetables, things like that, animal products. People feel better on these different things and different combinations of them. And there's a spectrum where some people, due to a variety of genetic stuff, their environment in the past, et cetera, do way better on literal meat only because they've had autoimmune conditions and some of the compounds in plants can actually irritate them,
Yeah.
leading to a lot of expression of symptoms. And some people just feel way better on plants as well, eating mostly plants. But just looking through the amount of nutrients that you cannot get either in the right amounts or the right forms in plant products, I think touting a plant-based or vegan diet as a healthy option is false, just because there's plenty of critical nutrients that you can't get from those that you can only get in animal products.
And they're super processed. Super processed. Like if you get one of those Beyond Meat burgers or whatever it is, right? Is it called Beyond Meat?
Yeah.
It's like 50 ingredients, and you've got canola oil in it, and you've got colorings and wheat, and you've got all this crap in there. And it's supposed to mimic the taste of meat. So it's almost like these people who are saying that's healthier. I argue, one, if you're trying to get the sensation of meat, that's a sign biologically that you're craving meat. Isn't it
Right.
ironic that it's like, it tastes just like steak? Why don't you just go eat steak then? Steak tastes like steak. And then two, it's more processed. It's way more processed for you versus one ingredient is steak, a burger.
Mhm.
So it is interesting that a lot of these people who are super passionate vegans because they think it's healthier, it's kind of like, well, dude, now you're taking in all of this wheat and PUFAs and you're taking in all this other crap in that little patty, and Kim Kardashian just did she's their new spokesmodel for the Beyond Meat or whatever. And she's like, so good.
Yeah. But again,
I'm like, I can't believe they're pushing this shit again still.
but this is the thing, like you have to pay to sponsor Kim Kardashian. And I think
Of
if
course.
the meat industry could pay her more, she would be eating steaks all day.
You're right. It's a game. It's money. It always comes down to money. But yeah, I'm extremely passionate about animal products. I feel really good on a mostly animal-based diet, but sometimes I'm wondering, like, is that okay? But it's like I go back to the basics of this. This is probably how we ate. lots of egg yolks, lots
Sure.
of meat, organ meats. I'm curious, how often should we be eating organ meats? Is there a point where you could eat it too much?
For sure. I mean, I think
Oh,
eating liver excessively every day, you can get iron overload, you can get vitamin A toxicity for sure.
oh, you'd have to eat a lot though,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, I know some popular carnivore-based influencers that
Uh-oh.
have had issues with this before.
We love
From-
to say their names.
No.
Because I get my meat from Force of Nature, which is local,
Right.
Force of Nature. I love their stuff because they have these blends that will mix in the organ, and I do that throughout the week, but it's only 10% of each patty. So to be honest, by the end of the week, I probably still got,
Yeah.
a decent amount of organ liver, but not like so much that it'd be
Right.
harmful, right?
Yeah. I mean, if that's the case, you're nowhere near.
Okay.
It's like if you're eating many ounces of just liver every day.
No, I just do blends because then I don't have to taste
Yeah.
it.
That's actually in my sink thawing out right now for dinner. So,
Oh, nice. Yeah. I always have to like wait a long time for it to thaw out. But I sent some to Mike because I was like, hey, you need to get some organ meats in. It's so healthy for you. And I mean, you can't really taste it. You kind of can sometimes, but we
Yeah.
just put some
Yeah.
mustard on the patty.
I just
So-
recently did a
Mhm.
nutrition analysis for a company called their Maui Nui
Mm.
venison. So they actually hunt wild access deer in Hawaii that are invasive there, so they're destroying the ecology.
Mm.
And they go out and hunt them at night and shoot them in the head, which is from like hundreds of yards away. It's an insane
Wow.
operation. And then they have a USDA inspector on site who clears the carcass so they can sell it to the public. So it's like the most ethical meat you could ever get.
Mm.
But I compared their muscle meat and organs versus like grain fed, grass fed, et cetera, all these things. But in that, it was just so obvious to me. It even told me like I need to be eating more organs because all the nutrition is in the organs, pretty much. I mean, you get a lot from eating the muscle meats for sure, but especially eating heart and liver together,
Yeah.
because they complement each other very well from a nutritional standpoint.
Okay.
And yeah, it's just I think everybody likely needs to be eating more organs.
Yeah.
It's just so important. And they most of them are thrown away right now. You go to a butcher shop and get them for almost free. most
So
places.
cheap.
Yeah.
They think you're crazy. They're like, what is this for your dog? They said that the other day at HEB. Clay was getting some because I wanted to freeze it and then pour it into a little cube. So then you
Mhm.
take it almost like you're making your own capsule. It's kind of gross. You have to take like a ton of them because I was like, oh, let me see if I can make my own organ supplement instead of the capsules that you buy.
Right.
Because I'm like, how potent are those? So I got liver. You put it in the smoothie. It liquefies, and then you pour it into little ice cubes, little
Mhm.
tiny baby ice cube tray, and you pop it into your mouth.
You like suck on it like
I felt like a genius. I was like,
a
this is great.
popsicle or what?
No, I don't suck on it because it's gross. So I just real quick like,
Yeah.
It's your morning swallowing
Oh,
ice
yeah.
cubes routine.
I mean, I don't do a lot of smoothies now because I don't do a ton of raw food, so I can't add the chunks to my smoothie. So I'm like, darn, how do I get in little tiny baby liver capsules? So I was like, oh, I'm gonna make my own little ice cube, make my own little capsule because I feel like this is one of my questions. The capsule companies, is it potent? Is it not? Like, are you really getting that much?
it's for sure better than nothing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I love the Paleo Valley one, and I take some of them, Heart and Soil, but I'm wondering if like there's a point of you're not really getting as much as you would get from the blended meats.
Yeah, I mean it's on a spectrum, and I think even
Yeah.
like the raw vegetables versus not raw
Yeah.
vegetables and all that type of stuff. And I think there's people who would argue for like a kind of purist blend here, but in my mind, there's this unarguable statement of you should be eating more real food than processed food.
Yeah.
And if you don't feel great with raw vegetables or you want to cook them or eat no vegetables or whatever, like I think that's on that spectrum. And I don't want to ever tell people like not to eat raw vegetables.
Yeah.
Even though like it may irritate people's guts and is not great for a lot of people. And I don't eat a lot of them myself for a variety of reasons. But I think that 99% of people don't eat real food in the first place. And so getting people to do that. But then when we're talking about then the organs, same thing. Like if you can get it and you have a way to do it where it is a real food, fresh, like you just killed the animal, that's the best.
Wow.
Okay, if it's frozen, that's now second
Yeah.
tier. If you're cooking it after it's been frozen, like so there's like different stages of nutrient degradation.
Yeah.
And then if you're freeze drying it, less so. But if that's where you're at in your journey, like that's easiest for you, great. Like for example, when I was like a 10-year-old, I tell a story of I used to like stash Doritos under my bed and snack on them at night. And I was like eating like just the craziest shit that you can imagine, like
Wow.
a Midwest fat kid
So
eating.
many PUFAs in there.
And now I'm like like I have my own farm animals and I hunt and I do all
Yeah.
this stuff and it's a very different life. But there was that point to now.
Wow.
And in between that, I used to take tons of different supplements and do that type of stuff, and that was appropriate for where I was at.
Yeah.
And so again, I don't want to discourage people from where they're at in their journey. Like I think that
Absolutely.
those organ supplements can be extremely effective, but it's on a spectrum.
Yeah.
And if you have a system that you like the taste of it, or you're good at cooking it, or you can source it well, and it's not a burden to your lifestyle, then for sure do that.
What do you make of all the different labels on meat here in the grocery store? Grain-fed, grass-fed, free range, all that. Sometimes it gets confusing of what I should be buying, and there's different prices for any type of meat. Do you have any recommendations?
Yeah, I mean, it's mostly bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah. So even
So what should I look for?
I mean, this is where it gets complicated really quickly. Beef versus pork versus chicken versus fish, they all have different regulations on labeling.
Yeah.
And then different ramifications on what those things mean in the real world. I think that you asked a question before, like, can people do this in an affordable way? The most affordable thing to do is go direct to your farmer and buy in bulk. And so even if you want to pop down a couple $100s in a freezer, that could last you for 10 plus years, and then go buy half of a steer, half of a cow at once, you're going to be eating ribeyes for like $5 a pound.
Wow.
And you can even ask for, in that case, like, hey, I don't want any of these extra cuts. A lot of times the farms can then ship those to other people and charge more. And you can get ground beef for like $3 a pound.
That's smart. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and that could be, most people will be good eating a pound of meat a day. I would say like a gram per pound of body weight is a pretty good target for most people.
Okay.
And that is a very affordable way to do it. And I think the best to just understand where your food's coming from. And so all these labels, I think, are good for the shopper to get some marketing pushed into their face. But other than that, if people can go to a farm and see what's going on, you don't have to think about it. It's one of these things where you just know when you see it.
Yeah.
Could you go to a farmer's market and find someone there and say, hey, are you able to send me a whole cow? Or like, how would you?
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
I don't know. How would you have this conversation with a farmer?
Yeah, I made this website. If you go to groundworkcollective.com, there's like a farm finder there, and there's like
nice.
3,000 farms that we put in there so far, and we keep adding them all the time. But you can contact farms there, and almost every single farm that sells beef will do quarter, half full.
Nice.
But again, going to the place,
Yeah.
Humans have this innate sense of what is sort of right and wrong, generally speaking. Sometimes it's completely warped because people live in a city indoors in cages too long. But when you see like again, everything's on a spectrum, right? And so when you see a farmer doing grain-fed cattle versus one on the other end of the spectrum doing like high intensity rotational grazing, which is it's like regenerative agriculture, where we're moving around the cattle or bison or other animals in a way that nature would have with predators moving them around, letting the ground rest. You understand, like, okay, I want to be eating this meat here, and this animal looks way healthier. This is an environment like I want to eat food from.
Yeah. But
people are so disconnected from where they get their food that these labels are somewhat necessary. Grain-fed, grass-fed, it sort of depends on what you're looking for. I think if you care about any of those things of health, climate, ethical reasons, I don't like to support grain-fed operations or high-intensity agriculture of any form. I think it's insanely abhorrent, and I don't want to support it. No judgment to people who do, and I still do sometimes when I'm at restaurants or whatever. I have no idea where the meat's coming from. I try to do my best, but no decision's perfect.
Yeah.
But grass-fed even is now to a point where, because it became a marketable thing, a lot of grass-fed farming is actually not much different than grain-fed, where they have huge intensive feedlots and the cattle are just eating one type of grass. And so the grass can be trucked in via alfalfa pellets. So grass-fed is starting to kind of lose any meaning.
Yeah.
But it could be really great too, just depending on because there's a lot of farmers who still market as grass-fed, but are doing really intense regenerative ag stuff. Very complicated. So again, it's just like the beef thing is with any of these things, go to the actual farm if you can, or try to see their practices. And it's just, I think, a good experience for people to actually understand where their food is coming from.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it really is.
Yeah, pork and chicken is just those two are a whole other thing that I'm starting to not even not even like 0.1%, I think, are edible for humans.
I've heard this. I've
And
heard
this-
it's
just 'cause,
healthier
like,
just
I-
do beef now.
Yeah.
Just the way they're farming them, huh?
So they're becoming the most highest growth sector of the meat industry because everyone's focusing on why cattle are so bad.
Pork and chicken are the highest
Yes.
growth. Okay.
So people think saturated fat is bad for red meat, which we could debunk that entire myth.
Hmm.
It's the highest component of breast milk. Why would we give something to babies that would give them heart disease? It just makes no fucking sense.
Yeah.
So people think that's bad for health. So eat whatever other meat, and then think it's bad for the climate because they fart and burp methane, which methane goes up, and it's part of a biogenic cycle, so it actually gets sucked back into the environment, and it's a thing that goes like this.
Methane's from their fart?
They're farting and they're burping. Yeah.
Wait, is this real?
Yeah,
Oh,
this
yeah.
is like the biggest thing why they think cattle is worse. And now there's a lot of places like Brazil that are
Wow.
actually being pushed to do grain-fed farming because the cows are alive for less time, so their total emissions,
They're farting less?
they're farting less because they're alive for less. Because
This is crazy.
grass-fed cows slaughtered like 24 months, and a grain-fed one like 12 to 16.
Wow.
So now we're actually pushing to the worst kind of actual bad for the environment farming because the ecosystem's all broken.
Yeah.
To try to minimize the methane that actually just goes back into the soil anyways. It's nuts.
Wow.
But so that's why people think that cattle are bad.
Yeah.
So people are buying more chicken and pork because most people don't go, oh, you told me to eat meat. I'm just not going to eat it. I'm going to eat this Beyond Burger because everyone knows that those things suck and they don't taste good, of course. And so they want to eat meat still, so they try to eat pork and chicken, and it's cheaper. You can go to Costco still and buy a chicken for $5. It's cooked. It's insane. Like everything that needs to happen for that to be the case economically,
Right.
is insane. So what we've done over the last 60 years is take these breeds, especially with chickens, and then we've had a surplus of feed of corn and soy, and we've basically manipulated the genetics of the chicken over time, manipulated the feed over time, where the main chicken that 99% of people eat, Cornish cross is the breed, will die if you don't give it corn and soy.
Oh my
They've been
gosh.
genetically modified that much that they're now
Yeah,
dependent.
I mean, not
on-
like artificially genetically modified, but like
but just over time.
breed these ones because they get bigger eating this thing,
Yeah.
and we're selecting them over and over and
Wow.
over again. And so we have this breed that literally before it gets slaughtered, even in the regenerative settings where you're moving these breeds around, they can't walk.
Yeah.
Oh.
They can't walk.
Yeah.
They are molting. They look sick. Again, this is even if you are doing the best practices possible. And it's not economically unfeasible for anybody to use any other feed source or breed source because there's this monopoly of corn and soy for the feed source and then the breed.
Mm.
And so to make any money doing any chicken farming, you must use these two things, even in a regenerative setting. But this breed of chicken has these two things that no one knows about. Woody breast syndrome, which makes the breast, again, we've optimized for size of the animal, not nutrient content of the animal.
Mhm.
And so the animal weighs more,
Mm.
but the breast, it's called Woody breast syndrome. The breast turns into fibrous tissue that's actually not even digestible protein.
Oh.
So when you're eating a chicken breast, a lot of that, like, yes, you put in MyFitnessPal protein, great. You're not digesting any of that because it's weird fibrous connective tissue it's like cross-linked together. You can't break it down.
Shit.
And then there's another thing called white striping disease that affects 90+% of these birds. That you'll see it in the fat when you have a chicken carcass. It's like white streaks.
Mm.
This isn't just the fat. This is a disease that the chickens have that we're just eating.
Hey guys, what's up? It's Mike. I'm popping in here to tell you about my absolute favorite soul product, our Alert Focus Caps. If you're dealing with any morning fatigue, brain fog, or just relying on coffee throughout the day to get you by, I got you. This is a doctor-formulated product that's been proven to increase focus, energy, and concentration with our proprietary blend of a handful of adaptogens, nootropics, and plant extracts. Some of the ingredients we use are lion's mane, mushrooms with neuroprotective effects that reduce brain fog and improve memory. We've got B12 in there, a brain-boosting vitamin that can improve mental clarity, increase energy, and boost mood. We've got all-natural caffeine from green tea extract with CBD to stop any jitters. And finally, one of my favorites, we've got a phenomenal blend of cordyceps in there. This is a powerhouse mushroom that's gaining popularity day over day because it increases oxygen uptake in the brain and increases blood flow to the brain, which will help you fight mental fatigue. You're going to feel alert and dialed in without the jitters, I promise you. You got to go try this out. And exclusive to our Best Medicine podcast listeners, we're offering a 20% off code on Alert and all sold products. So just use code TBM and make sure to let us know what you think. We've got over 6,000 5-star reviews now, and I'm so proud, and I stand by the quality and efficacy of our products. So go use code TBM at mysoulcbd.com and enjoy.
I'm never eating chicken ever again, starting today.
And
Yeah, what is the moral of that story? Like, just don't eat chicken?
No, they're
or
not.
there's
So
gotta
they're
be...
no. The superior meat is red meat, and
so
we've been convinced it's not. But it's
Yeah.
actually the cleaner, best meat if you have a choice at a restaurant or
some-
anywhere, right?
100%.
Okay.
But yeah, and so to why is this a problem? Obviously, we just talked about these two weird
Oh,
things. The
yeah.
animal's sick, terminal line genetics. If you took these Cornish cross, they don't breed; they'll die. So, do you want to eat an animal that's like at the end of its life is so fat and sick and can't breed and can't make any? Like, I don't want that to become me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's just that. But on top of that, when it eats all this corn and soy, just like humans, when we eat vegetable oils and things with these polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, we get the FUPAs.
PUFAs
get-
get the FUPAs. That right there is the clip that we're going to use for Instagram.
And,
teaser.
and so
That's
they
the
eat corn and
teaser.
soy, which then pushes their level of PUFA, omega-6.
You can't say that word without her
I
laughing.
know.
FUPA or PUFA?
PUFA, because of the FUPA.
Oh, man. Yeah, So,
Holy shit!
so
wow.
they get sick
Poor
by the end of their
chickens,
life.
man.
They're like 25 to 40% comprised of omega-6 fatty acids.
Yeah.
Not good. You want the
Not
omega
good.
3s, right? Not the
Yeah,
6.
or monounsaturated fat or saturated fat. And so if you look at, there's some studies of islanders who eat chickens, and everything that we should be eating is around like 2 to 3% omega-6. They're at 10 to 20 times that.
Mm.
And so one of the things that I'm interested in my farm is, can we raise chickens with different breeds and different feed combinations to drive that back down to that baseline? Again, what's the natural environment? What's the natural state of a chicken? What's the model here? Should be around 2% of this omega-6 fatty acid, but it's not. And so I don't see any path to have a true regenerative, healthy chicken yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to be possible. Doesn't mean people need to destroy all the relations to if you like it, go ahead and eat it. Just understand, like, there are some things going on in it. And there's a lot of farmers who are starting to try to play around with corn-free, soy-free blends, but that doesn't mean that the animal's actually going to be healthy at the end of its life.
Yeah.
And so it comes down to what I've seen of, you're just gonna have to let these chickens grow out over like 2 years instead of 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And so it's never gonna be an economically viable model to the alternative. And so if I have 100 birds, but I have to wait a year and a half to sell them,
Yeah.
whereas all my other farmers in the neighborhood are selling theirs after 6 weeks.
Yeah.
Just imagine, like, you're gonna get destroyed.
I love hearing this side of it because it really helps people understand the process of like what's actually going on in these industries. Food is an industry. It's about making money. It's not about making you healthy. And once you realize that, you can take control and figure out, okay, do I need to go to the farmer's market? Do I need to order food from places like Force of Nature or farms that can ship it to you? Is it a little bit more expensive? Yes, but it's almost like, where can we save to then use our money to invest in high quality meat, right?
Yeah.
It's arguably one of the most important things we'll ever invest in our life
Yeah.
is what we eat. So I'm curious, who do you think keto and carnivore is for? When do you think it's something that can really help people or be beneficial, whether it's for blood sugar or autoimmune? When do you love it for people?
So ketogenic diet is something that I think you need to qualify as what type of ketogenic diet, because I've seen a lot of people go on a
Because you
low
were
carb diet.
super keto, right?
Mhm.
At one point,
Yeah, and I've
when you started
I've
the
helped
company.
tens of thousands of people probably get into a state of ketosis and do that. But if you're reducing carbohydrates, for example,
Yep.
and guzzling soybean oil, it doesn't matter. Like, what are you doing? You know what I mean? So you're technically in a state of ketosis, running on ketones. So if people don't know what that is,
Can you define it? Yeah.
yeah, for
define
sure.
that, please.
So your body generally runs on one of two fuel sources: glucose, which is the breakdown of carbohydrates, or ketones, which is the breakdown of fat. And that's a very simplified way to understand, but you're basically running on fat or carbohydrates.
Mhm.
And you can only run on fat primarily only if you restrict carbohydrates. And so it's generally known as a very low carbohydrate diet. And that has a bunch of advantages for people generally who are metabolically unwell. Again, only if you have the issue of food quality nailed down.
Yeah.
Right.
So if you
Yeah.
if you
For
don't
sure.
out of the way, like
Step
I
one,
don't
get
even
it.
care
eat
Yeah.
whole foods.
what amount
Eat,
of carbs you're eating or not.
Yeah.
yeah.
But
This
there's
is level 2 nutrition.
yeah, there's
Level 2.
so cancer and like diseases, a lot of cancers respond very well to ketogenic diet because a lot of cancers will feed primarily on glucose. So if you take away glucose and have ketones in there, it's been shown to literally kill cancer cells. So it's kind of interesting.
Wow.
Epilepsy and like there's a lot of like random conditions that's really good for. I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people,
Alzheimer's, I think there were some
Yep,
studies out.
exactly. So
Yeah.
your brain prefers ketones, your heart also can run on ketones preferentially. So people after a heart attack, things like that. But I think the primary thing for what most issue people have is metabolic dysfunction. So if you have issue keeping your blood sugar stable, or if it spikes a lot, or you have a lot of the markers of metabolic syndrome, pre-diabetic, things like that, it's great, but it did not cause the issue. So I used to think even like 3 or 4 years ago, and I wrote a book, and the book has this in there that I don't agree with anymore. So don't buy the book.
I love
Just
that
kidding.
you
No, I
changed
love-
your mind. That's cool.
Yeah.
No, that takes a lot of humility, and
Yeah.
honestly, I'm really happy you said that you recognize like I've learned more and I've evolved versus digging your head in the sand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
but sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, what
I
part
was
do
just,
you not
I was just
agree with?
wrong.
That's
I mean, I thought I was under the impression that excess carbohydrates led to insulin resistance and diabetes and things like that. And I actually think it's the high omega-6 linoleic acid, seed oils, things like that are causing the problem, especially when eaten with carbohydrates.
Which they
lead-
usually are.
lead to the
paired.
issue. And so
Right. So that
I learned most of this actually working clinically with people
okay.
and seeing that when people went on a ketogenic diet and did it in this poor quality way, it still had high omega-6,
Oh.
no reversal of any of the symptoms. Very little weight loss, very little issue. And I actually see this in a lot of the mice research because they'll feed them high soybean oil chow. And then you get all of these zealots on the other side saying, see, it did nothing. It's like, you're feeding the animal literal poison. What do you expect? Like, of course, their metabolism is going to break. How you induce insulin resistance in a rat is you feed it soybean oil.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
so, why would that not be the primary driver in humans?
Wow.
So, and this is also an interesting thing about when I went to Tanzania, observing some of these things, a question sort of changed in my mind of, are there any very high carbohydrate consuming populations that don't have insulin resistance? And the answer is yes, tons of them. Most Asian countries, for example. But they
Yeah.
started getting this. If you look at a chart of sort of consumption of seed oils and omega-6 fats, Japan, for example, now is like their rate of type 2 diabetes and prediabetes is actually going faster than the US.
Wow.
Their level of carbohydrate consumption has actually gone down over time, and their level of seed oils, basically, it looks a lot like when we saw smoking and lung cancer come out, and we saw the graphs of like, holy shit, this looks like the same thing.
Yeah.
The consumption of seed oils and total omega-6 in the diet, and heart disease, diabetes, obesity, metabolic dysfunction, et cetera, look the same thing, like the same thing. We're not at a public consensus that these things are tied together, and nor were we with cigarettes when we first got the data. But I think that's the primary cause now.
Wow.
And so I think the ketogenic diet, even if you've destroyed your metabolism, you still need to pull back on the carbohydrates, even if the seed oils or omega-6 caused it, because now you have an errant metabolism. Your body can't process carbohydrates effectively.
Wow.
Why is there the keto flu? They call that. Why is it so difficult to kind of switch over? And what is happening in your body when you're going from when you're getting into ketosis?
You're born in a state of ketosis, and for most people living today, you're out of that state within. I mean, if you're breastfed, great, but even if not, you've never been in a state of ketosis because you've been constantly fed and you've been eating carbohydrates your entire life. So your cellular mechanisms and like literally transporters on your cells to use certain energy switches, downregulates, prioritizes carbohydrates. And so when you restrict your body of carbohydrates for the first time in your entire life, your body responds like, oh shit, if we need to do something here, but that there's a lag time there.
Yeah.
And so that's when it's really helpful to use things like exogenous ketones or things like that to sort of bridge the gap to give your body this fuel. So you can go, oh, okay, this is what we should be using. We have the fuel access.
Yeah.
We're looking for carbohydrates. We don't have it. What else can we use? If it gives it something else, then it's effective. But yeah, it can be brutal for some people.
Well, you started a big company called PerfectKeto. Was that kind of the motivation behind it, to help people, give them, at least start them 101 of how to get into ketosis and kind of live a healthier lifestyle?
I need to find a better way to describe my intentions, but sometimes I say that I started to trick people because I knew people were going to want to do this for weight loss.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how we positioned a lot of it. And with all the content, so we did an enormous amount of content, tons of podcasts, lots of like 1,000+ blog articles, wrote the book, all this type of stuff. And we had, time I left the company last year, 150 million page views. Like, did what we aimed to do as far as getting exposure about this. But in almost every single piece of our content, we put in how to have a healthy lifestyle beyond just the thing. So I think when people reach towards incentive to change their health, if we could nestle as many things in there of like, okay, also get good sleep and move and do this stuff and change your lifestyle.
Yeah.
Like that was my goal of like, how can we wrap all of this stuff up and deliver it into this like, and you'll look great because you lost weight because you did a ketogenic diet.
Smart marketing. Sell people what they want and
Yeah.
then show them what they need.
Yeah.
Right.
So
That's
it
smart.
was that. I mean, like I said, I need to find a better word than trick people.
Yeah.
More of educate them holistically.
Tricking them into a good lifestyle.
Right, exactly.
Not these other companies that are tricking them into a bad lifestyle. You're tricking them into good. You're like, ooh, come over here. It's going to be good. Tell people what PUFAs are. For people listening, they're like, wait, what the frick? I didn't know that canola oil is bad for you. And what else? Like canola, corn.
Grapeseed.
Yeah. So
what are they?
It's in everything.
PUFA is polyunsaturated fatty acid. So that's a type of fat that's really unstable. So omega-6 fat is another word for it. But the way that we primarily consume it is via what they used to be called great branding vegetable oils.
Yeah.
We've now taken that away and given them seed oils. So we're just still a refresh.
Yeah.
But those are corn, cottonseed, canola, sunflower, safflower, soybean, grapeseed, rice bran, peanuts.
Okay, so there's like 10 to 20 that are like the main.
All of them. Very high in omega-6.
That when you're at the grocery store, turn over the box and see if they're in there.
The biggest thing that I think of is when you think of whatever it is in oil, first of all, do you know what that thing is? Do you know what a canola is?
No, I only know what an avocado is, so I just eat avocado oil.
It swims in the ocean, right? Canola is a type of fish.
It's like the bison. It's like a bison or something.
I saw a canola the other day, actually.
Cannoli.
It was out in your front yard. I was like,
a
what?
Wild
what
canola?
the fuck is that thing? Get out of here, canola. And it ran away. I know.
Are we losing our minds?
I wanted to eat it, but
should make some cannoli oil.
Cannoli.
From Italy.
Yeah, that actually would be good.
That'd just be delicious. There's nothing wrong with that.
So when you're for people listening, they're like, I'm at the grocery store. First of all, you shouldn't be eating too much baggage stuff. But if they are like these new healthy keto paleo chips, I'll do siete because siete uses avocado oil.
Yeah.
So that one's okay. Coconut oil and avocado are okay.
So we'll get there. But okay.
They might not be okay, guys.
What is a rapeseed? What is a grapeseed?
Right.
And then the next level is, can I squeeze fat from this thing? And if the one that gets people that they think is healthy, that is actually one of the worst, is sunflower oil.
Is not healthy.
Tastes good though.
So when you're looking at the fat, how much of linoleic acid or this specific PUFA omega-6 does it have in its fatty acid composition? And we should again be getting about 2 to 3% of that. Sunflower oil has almost 80%.
Wow, it's an innocent sunflower.
It's so interesting how you'd see that word sunflower. And you'd think
love sunflower butter.
So what are common things that have sunflower oil that we probably don't even realize?
Most of the better for you treats. So the things that are like healthy this or new that, or like sauces, especially. So sauces, salad dressings, packaged food are going to be your biggest vendors. And then also when you're at restaurants, again, the incentive is not health. The incentive is to make money as a restaurant.
Right.
So they use the cheapest cooking oil because you can't tell the difference between what oil you get in your food, what fat you get in your food. There's no feedback there. So they're using the cheapest stuff they could possibly find, which is not even sunflower oil. Typically, it's like grapeseed or rapeseed or canola. But canola oil, for example, is like 25% of linoleic acid. We, again, should be eating about 2 to 3% of this. That's what's in meat. From like red meat. So steak, any sort of beef has like 2 to 3%. Species appropriate, great. When you're getting 10 times that, again, the way this fat affects you we're starting to realize now with all this new research coming out is outrageous. I mean, it's just, it literally breaks your entire cellular machinery, your metabolism. And we just published at zeroacrefarms.com 2 different white papers, one on obesity and one on heart disease. That they're like, one was 70 pages, our first draft of it. Like, it includes all of the evidence. It's very intense and very in depth, but I think it's implicated as one of the primary drivers in obesity, heart disease, cancer, neurodegenerative disease, metabolic dysfunction. And so you ask, okay, well, how could it be this thing that causes all of these things? And all of them are implicated by a broken metabolism, broken mitochondria. And we have all of the pathways. Like, all these are very clear. There's literal journal, like research journals dedicated to linoleic acid. This fatty acid has all these toxic metabolites. All these toxic metabolites break your metabolism. But no one has connected the dots and said, where are we eating these things? Like, how are, like, it's mind blowing to me. Like, once I started really digging into literature and learned from some really amazing people like Tucker Goodrich, who's like, I think the world's smartest person on this topic. It is above, I would say, like double-digit percentage. It's like literal poison to the body. And there's some trolls online, and some people, even like Harvard Health, will say, well, vegetable oils lower your LDL, which is true. So you have this LDL cholesterol in your blood. People measure it. We can talk about if high is good or bad or whatever. But in general, yes, eating amounts of vegetable oil or seed oils lowers your LDL cholesterol. But they don't ask why. And if you answer that question, why does it lower LDL cholesterol? It turns it into oxidized LDL cholesterol, which is now a different marker in your body. And so oxidized LDL is actually the thing that is required to initiate plaque formation in heart disease. Dang. And so, yes, you're lowering on a lipid panel the LDL-C number, but you're raising oxidized LDL. Like, you're just, it's again, so mind-blowing to me that we have this information and it's clear as day. You cannot get oxidized LDL without this inflammatory process that linoleic acid does.
Wow. Just massive inflammation in your body. So basically, just like when you see the word blah, blah, oil, if you can't squeeze it, I mean, might as well just stay away. I don't know. Maybe I'm kind of an extremist with this stuff. I'm like, I might as well just stay away, because if I'm going to do a chips or a packaged food here and there, it's just going to be siete. Is that okay, you think? Here and there? I know it's still processed.
Here and there is totally fine. And the thing with avocado oil, which I'm sorry to say, is technically a seed oil. Same with olives, because they press the pit, which is a seed, into the oil. So, for example, olive oil, there's a study that showed olive oil can be anywhere between 10 and 50% linoleic acid, because it varies so much the type of olive you get, the exposure, oxidation, etc. Avocado oil is like 12 to 16%. Again, like a butter or ghee is like 1 to 2%. And so that's a coconut oil, great. Again, much lower. So the higher saturated fat it is, lower linoleic acid, more stable. So that's what you should be going for. So I think that even still, like, I don't recommend people be guzzling avocado oil or even olive oil to that end.
Okay. You really recommend ghee, grass-fed butter, coconut oil.
Is that what you do? We want to do what Anthony does.
I don't add a lot of fat to my food. I was actually thinking about this the other day. Like, I've been eating a little more carbohydrates lately, because I'm just starting to be more active with farm work and working out and stuff like that. And so
what does carbs look like for you? Like
fruit mostly, rice, potatoes, stuff like that.
We want to know, what do you eat in a day? Yeah, you like wake up, you have some eggs from your farm, some beef. What's your
trying to think of what I've eaten today.
So Captain Crunch in the morning.
Skittles for lunch. Blood sugar loves that.
Hot Pockets.
Actually,
you love Hot Pockets. Off air, you were saying how much you love Hot Pockets.
Yeah, you walked in and you were eating Hot Pockets.
I actually have one in my pocket, but I ate it. So
I didn't want to call you out, but I saw a Hot Pocket.
He's like eating Doritos and he walks in and like shoves it in his thing. We're like, dude, we saw you.
There's actually these Lucky Charms bars that when I'm feeling low blood sugar, I actually rip out. And
there you go.
I mean, you look very healthy. So like, you obviously are doing something right. Like you're eating mostly animal foods, and you sprinkle in potatoes and fruit, and like, will you do honeys and
no.
Wow, you're just like the epitome of health over here.
I just don't have, after this long, I just don't have that much craving for things but real food.
Yeah.
I try to eat as much stuff that's local that I can source myself. So like, my tier of how I think about what I can eat, does it come from my property? Yes, great. Can I source it from other local farms, especially around my farm? Awesome. I think there's probably a lot of information in food, and this gets a little bit more of woo, but I think we'll be able to explain it later, of this animal that's living in this environment eats the things that are in this environment. And we already see this we have bees, and we have a bunch of honey from them, and it's great. But honey from bees that have gathered everything locally, it actually can reduce people's allergies. And so I think there's likely a lot of other signals that is being transferred in food that we do not appreciate yet. This guy that I just did a podcast with, Stefan Van Vliet at Utah State, is starting to profile meat and is finding 40,000 different compounds that vary, phytochemicals, all this different stuff. Like we look at what's in food right now and we're like, okay, what are these 12 vitamins and 15 minerals and carbs and fat, and that's it. Are you fucking kidding me? There's so much in food.
Yeah.
And so I try to prioritize just because, one, it tastes better. 2, it's cheaper. 3, I'm supporting my local community.
Yeah.
4, getting the freshest food, I think, is going to be the healthiest food.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that and then sort of supplement around those things. And so I'll likely, as the growing season gets way harsher here, I will eat less fruit and stuff like that and probably go a little bit more keto. I try to like do things more seasonally to where I am.
Ah, that's smart.
Have you recommended carnivore diet for people with autoimmune issues or gut issues? And is that more of an acute 30, 60-day thing, or kind of what's your thought on that? I know there's a lot of controversy, I guess, about carnivore diet lately, but it's become very popular. So
Mike has some autoimmune stuff. So he's always very curious about doing it.
So we talked earlier, right, about this natural environment, natural state, abnormal environment, abnormal state. And I think for a lot of people to get from the abnormal state to the natural state of health, from disease to health, you need to have you need to restore that normal environment. So that you need to do that. And then you have to have interventions on top of that typically. And so, for example, if I have a train that's running on tracks and the tracks are nice and straight and the wheels are smooth and everything, it's going to keep running on those tracks. If I now twist that track before the train hits that, it will fly off the tracks, right? Same thing. If we fix the track and get back to this natural environment of the train, it doesn't magically get back on track. So we typically need some sort of adjustment to get that thing back to its case. But you also need to fix the track. So you need to get back to like a normal state of the environment. So when it comes to health things as well, the way I think about it a little bit more clearly as a human is, if I am walking down the street and I trip off of a curb and sprain my ankle, I'm looking like that ankle's going to be fine in 6 weeks. If I am doing the same thing and I take a really bad fall and I break that ankle, you're looking at maybe a couple months, but it's likely going to function roughly the same. If I get run over by a bus and my leg gets literally crushed by a bus, I may never walk the same again. And so the same thing applies to people's internal physiology as well, in a sense that I think a lot of people can get better and get back to a baseline and back to that sort of natural state representation of what our genetics should be. But some people, they can't because they have had so much damage internally that they need to do interventions long term. So to bring that around to answer the question, I think it can be a great reset for people to at least just get a baseline of how do I feel here? What is there to be expected? But I know a lot of friends and people that I've worked with in the past can't introduce really anything beyond meat. And if they do, they get, a lot of actually mental issues. So depression, fatigue, things like that, autoimmune stuff. I think that sometimes with that though, people just aren't looking at enough of the root cause. And so it's the question is always, is this as good as it's going to get? Or are you just relying on this one thing and you're not looking at other interventions to try to get you back to this baseline?
Wow.
But
that's a great answer to that.
Yeah.
But understanding that,
one of the
like,
best answers I've heard.
you could have just been hit by the bus. Doesn't look like it. Like you seem to be in okay state. So it's like, it's not.
I'm not hit by a bus. I was hit by like a Vespa. Like I didn't quite like somewhere in that, like I walked out, a Vespa hit me. Yeah. It hurt. But
my
I'm
gosh.
still here.
What's the deal with oat milk? Let's cancel oat milk.
Oh my God.
Oat milk's not a person. We can cancel. I mean, I don't touch it, thank God. But I feel like nuts in general, I'm questionable of them now.
Are we not trying to get Oatly as a sponsor before he goes here?
Well, the only reason I knew it was bad is because I interviewed Glucose Goddess, this gal who's like the expert on blood sugar regulation, and she told me, yo, if you're gonna add something to your coffee, it needs to be healthy fats, like full fat organic milk. Don't be adding Oatly, because a lot of gals are doing that, going to Starbucks and whatnot, not realizing that then it's basically just pure carbohydrates, and then it's actually wrecking your blood sugar. So that's why I stayed away from it. But what else is bad about
So
oat milk?
Canceled.
you're taking grains, which again, I don't think humans should be eating a lot. It's a long story, but you're taking grains, you're making them into weird grain syrup, and then you're taking that and you're mixing that with other weird chemicals, and then you're putting that with the vegetable oil into literally one of the most, what I believe, toxic things that a human could possibly eat. I think that, again, everything's on a spectrum, and a donut is probably the worst thing a human could eat. It is wheat, sugar, and vegetable oils fried in vegetable oil.
Oof. But it's so good. But
yeah, it's like, if you're talking about like probably the worst thing a human could eat, that's likely one of the worst things.
Don't
Like
eat donuts.
maybe that, like a preserved donut on shelf that has more weird chemicals in it.
Yeah.
But Oatly's not far behind that. That's about what Oatly is.
Wow.
Yeah,
Guys.
and again, like combining these things together, this is where the real damage happens. So all that inflammation, when you have carbohydrates in a rapid supply in your bloodstream, and you have this inflammation going on like crazy, it's brutal. So
Wow.
and just to
It's great
just
to know,
to
though.
punctuate it, when you have stuff like, if you were to have oats on their own, or even like Malk is a really great company that does nut milk, stuff like that. Like their oat milk is just oats and water, I think.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay.
If somebody wants to do that for whatever reason, I still don't think people should be drinking oats, but
Okay.
it's much better than Oatly.
Mhm.
But if you have just like a milk or a grain water, you're going to have issues. Typically, a human will, the gut lining and the gap junction in your gut to allow, this food goes in, this food stays out. Those get destroyed. And so that's where a lot of autoimmunity stuff can come in, because people have these weird particles enter their bloodstream. Your body goes, what the hell is this? Starts attacking it, attacks yourself. And then that takes, if you stop eating that, it takes about, a week, 2 weeks to heal. So it heals pretty fast, especially if you're eating good foods and have high glycine, things like that. If you have sugar and you just spike your blood sugar, sucks because you feel like shit in a couple hours and you have this big crash. But like generally speaking, like you're back to baseline in a couple hours. When you have these seed oils and the vegetable oils, again, which are really high in Oatly, and 25% of our diet, by the way, it comes from vegetable oil as an American. 25% of our diet. 25%.
Somebody's got to change this industry.
Like,
I think it's going to be you.
just by way of things we're eating every
Yes.
day.
It's in
not
everything.
thinking
Isn't that
about it.
crazy?
It's
It's actually
in
like 26.2 or something like that. But yeah, it's insane.
It's in like every packaged food.
Jesus.
So a couple hours for sugar, week or two for grains, 2+ years for vegetable oils to get out of your system, because these embed as fatty acids into all of your tissues. Most of your tissue is made of fat, especially your cell membrane. And so these things literally make up your body, your nervous tissue, your cell membranes, everything.
Wow.
And they don't get replaced. If you stopped eating all seed oils and everything today,
I am, yeah.
you still have 2 years minimum. The half-life is 2 years.
The
When's the last time
half-life
you
is
had
2
one?
years.
I had some seed oils.
I don't know, probably 2 weeks ago.
Oh, really?
I mean,
Well,
there's
it's like if
times
you
that
eat
like,
out,
Oh,
it's
I like
you
almost
went to
like
the
a
restaurant.
whereas like sometimes I'm just like,
Oh.
fuck it, I don't want to think about this right now, or
Okay.
be annoying
It's
at this
life.
restaurant. Yeah.
Because you can ask, of course, right? I always say, be that person at the restaurant that's like, hey, can you
I
make sure
recommend
sauce
that,
is on
yeah.
the side, or no sauce, or what oils do you use here? I'm curious. Or I'm gluten and dairy free, even if you don't have a, intolerance, right? It's like, why not be that person? Everyone's like, I'm afraid to
Yeah.
say that at the restaurant. I'm like, why? It's your body. It's your money. Say something. It's like, it's your food. I'm like, I'm going to ask the waiter, and they usually don't mind. I'm like, hey, what
True.
oil do you guys use? It's funny because usually they'll be like, I don't know. I'm like, what oils do you guys use? So I go to the Well here because it's like the only place I know that
Yeah,
supposedly
great.
uses good oils. But Mike's always like, let's go out to eat. I'm like, we can't. Processed oils.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I mean, but I do think at some point you see people that start to get like obsessed.
Yeah, that's me.
And then
Yeah.
there's like, right, but like then there's like that emotional stress aspect.
I
So now all of
know.
a sudden, if you're stressed all day
I know,
about
but
it,
when you
that's
know
gonna work
too much,
against
now
you.
you can't not know it.
Well, now,
The-
yeah.
This is the period.
Now I'm scared to death, honestly.
No,
like
that's
Anthony
great.
came here and
No, we can eat, meats and
I know,
animal-based
I'm joking.
foods, and you have the resources and the
course.
knowledge. You're privileged in that fact that you have the ability to be doing this. Actually, it's
you
great.
know, one of the things, Anthony, I've been looking. Oh, sorry, go ahead. You were,
I was to say, getting scared and stressed out about all this stuff
yeah,
is just part of the journey, man. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
for most health stuff, and I've gone through this maybe 50 times now, I'll be some freak about it and I'll like over optimize and yell at the waiter and all this type of stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'll internalize it and integrate it, and it'll just be like part of my life.
Sure.
And I think people, it's okay to go through that process.
Yelling at the waiter.
I like that.
We were actually at this restaurant in Ojai a couple days ago, and Martha, my fiance, was like, "Hey, what oil do you use in this thing?" And the guy's like, "Oh, with some of these we use grapeseed and some olive oil." And he's like really helpful. And we sat down like 7 feet away from the counter, and the guy at the counter was like, "Why was she asking that question?" He's like, "Oh, there's this seed oil conspiracy going. It's this QAnon thing that Alex Jones has been talking about." He's like, "I can't believe these freaks are like," I'm like, "We're sitting
Wait.
literally right here."
Wow.
And you're like, how are you correlating Alex Jones and corn oil now? Like, that's
Oh, yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah,
Like, give
so
me a break.
apparently it's a
my
QAnon conspiracy that we're
Wow.
spinning, yeah, so.
Do you think that women and men should be eating differently a little bit because of our hormonal profiles?
I think every human should be eating differently like that.
Yeah. But because women, obviously, we undergo different stresses. And do you feel like women need more maybe carbohydrates at certain times? Do you believe in that?
I don't think I'm an expert to talk about that. Like, I think there's a lot of great people who, like women especially, who have the experience of being a woman, who have done like even seed cycling and some of these things where they like time different foods, different parts of their cycle. Like, I have no context.
Yeah.
Right.
I just know a lot
Maybe it
of the
works, maybe it
studies
doesn't,
that
yeah.
you've been mentioning. I'm like, oh, are these all on men? And I wonder if women absorb the oils differently. But
I
as
would
a
think
whole, I
more.
feel like they're not good for me either, obviously.
Yeah,
but-
I mean, if you think about it as women store more fat than men typically, have much higher body fat percentage. So I'd say it's probably worse for women if I were to just think off the top of my head.
Okay. Yeah. No, that makes sense.
Are you traveling around a lot right now?
Less than usual, but
Yeah.
a decent amount.
Okay. How do you eat healthy while traveling?
We have a routine.
You bring your meat
Yeah.
sticks.
Yeah.
What you just
What's in your bag?
We
I'm
land
curious of
and hit the Whole Foods immediately.
Nice.
okay,
Yeah. And then hit the jerky aisle.
not the hot bar, right? The hot
I think
bar.
they're listening. They haven't
Whole
said
Foods.
anything, but I've noticed hot bar items starting to turn over
Really
Wow.
and not use as much canola oil.
Okay.
interesting.
So
Okay, maybe
good
we're
job,
doing something.
Whole Foods rep.
Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Yeah.
tell us exactly what you eat when you travel. For the
I'm
people
trying to
listening who are
think-
like, what do I bring in the car or on the plane?
that's tough for me. I travel
Trying to
all
think
the time.
what. I mean, my go-to is like find a good restaurant where I can just get a steak generally.
Mhm.
But if not, canned fish. Big fan of. Patagonia has an awesome like canned mussels and fish like that. So like something like that, and then jerky, whatever it is, from usually that aisle. Like it's not perfect, but like Epic generally has.
Mhm.
So I think I have some still in my backpack from this, but like little bites, and they actually have liver bites that are carried at most Whole Foods. Then we'll get some fruit. Like we had a watermelon, bananas, blueberries, stuff like that. I'm trying to think of anything else. Dates. That's
So
about it.
you're not in ketosis. You're not full on.
No, I will be this. Like I said, it probably will be this winter.
Got it.
I'm just-
Do you have any recommendations for people that want to kind of get into it? It can be a little bit intimidating, but I know you guys have a ton of information and
Electrolytes, to support
content
and
and
everything.
yeah, but do you like, let's say someone's listening right now and they're like, I'd like to start ketosis. Like, where the fuck do I start? You know,
Yeah, I mean, I think that
in a healthy
Step
way.
one, get the oils out,
In a
though.
healthy way.
Right?
So you can read the book I wrote, but just ignore the whole part about why I think the things are the way they are.
Yeah. What's the title of the book?
Keto Answers.
Okay.
But
Keto
yeah, I
Answers.
mean, there's so much content out about that stuff now, where I think that the biggest thing is just getting started, but having good quality food. And so
Yeah.
that is more important than trying to figure out like how many grams of fat or carbs or whatever.
Mm.
As long as you get started and then focus on food quality, you'll find your way there. And I know that sounds like very basic, but I just
No.
working through with like thousands of people and helping them out.
Yeah.
That seems to be the combination of restrict your carbohydrates, don't eat any carbohydrates, find out where like what your food's made of. And a lot of people, which shocked me when I first started working with people, helping them with ketogenic diet, had no idea what food was comprised of.
Yeah.
What has fat or carbs or in what amount? How does it affect me? How does it make me feel?
Yeah.
And so that's why I think it's great to do as an experiment, just to get a little bit more connection with your food and understand, what is my food made of? How does it make me feel? Like what's going on with this thing that I'm ingesting and that's turning into me?
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think it's a very simple answer, but that,
Cool.
and then if troubleshooting, there's an infinite amount of resources online now. So just Google it.
Yeah, it is interesting that when a lot of people go to Europe, I've heard this so many times now, they'll have a little bit of the fresh sourdough or the bread, or they'll have a little bit of this dairy that usually they don't have when they're in the United States, and they feel great and they metabolized it well. They felt less inflamed there. They just felt better. So it's kind of like, what's going on? Is it because you're walking more in Europe, plus the quality of the food is just so different? Like you and Hannah even said this. Mike was like,
I've
he's
noticed it.
almost like was
Maybe it's placebo, maybe it's
no,
not.
you're like the 50th person to say this to me.
I've
So there's
noticed
something
it.
going on that the European farming is different. It's all like it's cleaner. So people are feeling better on eating gluten there versus eating gluten in the United States. It's different.
Yeah.
The way you metabolize it.
It's different strains of wheat is a big part. They don't spray their crops nearly as much.
Okay.
They have strict laws on quality. It's like, for example, in France, I don't know if this is just a Parisian thing, if it's all of France, but there are very intense laws on baking bread.
Wow.
So, for example, the baguette can only be 3 ingredients and has to be a certain amount of wheat, water, and salt. And it has to be sold from that bakery only. So you can't make it, you can't mass produce it and then have it be consumed.
That's
be consumed by
great.
someone. So it's like
Wow.
they
Good
just
idea.
care about, as much as it's still going the same way we went, which was profit at all costs. They have this heritage in food culture in every country that has its own permutation,
Yeah.
whether it's Italy or France or Spain or whatever. But they have a rootedness, and I think just like a more of awareness that we should probably be thinking about how we can continue doing this for a longer period of time. Where we're very short-term thinking in the U.S. of what is next quarter's financial statement going to look like.
Wow. In your dream world, what would be the oil that every restaurant in the world, or in America, I should say, is using?
Beef tallow.
Okay. So
Okay.
you want to start a beef tallow company?
I've thought about it.
No, I'm serious. Like what if you were the person who pioneered this? But it's not scalable?
Yeah. I did the math on this.
Of course you
And so even if we took all of the tallow, so all of the beef that we're killing per year for meat, and used all of that fat to make tallow.
Yeah.
I think it's only like 100,000 pounds or 100 million. I can't remember the exact numbers. I'll send it to you, put it in the show notes.
Okay, yeah.
But I know the ratio. All of the fat that we can get from animals, if we use 100% of it, is 1/70th of our current consumption of seed oils.
Wow.
And we're already using a good part because we don't want to throw away stuff because we're using the whole animal because it's a profitable thing. So we sell it off to soap manufacturers and all this other stuff. And we do eat a good amount of it.
Yeah.
But even if we put all of that into edible tallow, 1/70th.
Wow.
So even if we 10x that in a regenerative way, like raise the animals well, which I don't think we can.
Yeah.
Like we're not even close.
Man, I would love to live in this future.
I mean,
I don't know if I'll
do
still
you
be
guys have,
around
do
when
you
this
guys have
happens.
kids yet?
No.
You guys can have the healthiest kids and babies
Yeah,
ever. I mean,
just grass-fed children.
oh my
free
God,
range
the
babies.
shit that we ate growing up. I mean, granted,
I know,
guess-
but thank God we started in high
broke.
school being healthier, so we can make up for it. We can still fix it. It's fine.
yeah, for sure.
We went to Taco Bell though a lot.
We haven't gotten hit by the bus yet. We did. Oh, well, Taco Bell's the best. Yeah, Taco Bell seed oil. They're not using.
If I
any
take
bad
enough
oils,
binders,
right?
will that push out all of the Taco Bell?
Taco Bell actually uses organic. No.
Oh, I was like, what? This whole time? Oh my goodness.
This podcast is sponsored by Taco Bell. Yeah. So one of the questions
We'll
that
close it out with this
yeah,
juicy question.
also we're calling the show the best medicine. That has different connotations, different meanings to different people. We've actually found some pretty fascinating answers, ones you wouldn't expect. But for you, Anthony, what do you feel like is the best medicine? And maybe that could be something that just popped into your head, something you live your life by, something you think people need more of. But for you personally, when I say the best medicine, what pops in your head?
FUPAs. Just kidding. No, sorry.
Yes. As many FUPAs as you can have access to.
Oh, well, perfect.
Whoa,
me and you, man. I had the same answer.
Okay. It's been a long day.
Yeah.
I think that my answer has been for a long time this nutrition question. It seems to be the biggest lever. But as I've gone through this now, I've realized how important mental and emotional health is. So it's just, as much as I want things to be linear and I want to hit a domino and have it ripple down. And that's how I've approached nutrition and physical health. It's like, if you don't have good physical health, how could you have good mental health? That's kind of how I think about it. But I think a lot of ways that I'm seeing, like, how could you possibly have good physical health if you don't have good mental health, like a good attitude about it? And even digging through like a lot of trauma, stuff like that type of work myself, and I'm uncovering like these things called feelings. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here?
I've heard of that.
I'm realizing how important this is.
Sure.
And even if you have a proper functioning body, like a good physical body,
Yeah.
if you're all messed up in here, like what's the point? You know what I mean? And so I think that answers my like getting the shift in the next 10 years
Yeah.
as I get older. But yeah, I think for now, nutrition just 'cause it's the easiest answer for me because that's what I've done the last 15 plus years on. I think that where I've focused, but yeah, I think that I'm in process shifting to thinking about mental, emotional health more.
I love that.
It's so interesting. We've interviewed a lot of different people, from professional athletes to breathwork specialists to doctors, and there's always this central theme of like our life is just our thoughts and our headspace and our essentially how strong our mind is.
Yeah,
Right.
our
And
emotions.
everything, our emotions, how it's all trickling down from our mental state, which ironically seems to be the lowest it's ever been now in 2022
Yeah.
post pandemic. So that's thank you. That's a cool
Yeah.
answer.
Well, like I said before, I don't think we have a model for it like we do with physical health.
Yeah.
We don't understand the things that we do about physical health from a natural environment perspective. So with physical health, we have all the biohack stuff like, oh, get 8 hours of sleep,
Yeah.
like do movement, eat real food, blah, 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 blah. Get these markers. You should look like this. You should feel like this. Great. We have none of that modeled out for mental health. And so we're starting to dig in and have all these esoteric trauma thing and this reactive thing from your parent. Are you like anxious or avoidant and all of these things? But it's not, there's no framework. There's no roots to attach these things together and be like, what are we actually aiming for? And so if you use the same model of we need to fix the tracks and then intervene to get back, like I think we're doing a lot of intervention, but we're not fixing the tracks. And so I'm more interested in like, how do you do that in the modern world? Like, is community and connection. Everybody lives in their own separate fucking house. Like, how do we get people actually dependent on each other again? And that's why I like farming, because I have friends in Austin. No one's dependent on anyone else. We're all dependent on strangers. We all make money, use that money for abstract needs for like strangers. Like, no one's doing anything for each other ever.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah.
Like, we're friends and we hang out, but living on a farm, and I call my friend, I'm like, hey man, you need to help me load some pigs right now. Like that type of thing doesn't happen in the city.
Yeah.
And just that bond you get from actually needing to depend on other people is one of those things like sleep is for physical health. And I'm just trying to think more of like, what is that model that we're missing now in the modern world? And how do we replicate it? Like 8 sleep mattress for emotional and mental health? Because I don't think we're asking those questions. And I don't think the same thing as we don't fix the track for the train, it's never going to run. So if we don't fix the mental, emotional environment, how do we ever expect the interventions to work? I don't think we should.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think the issue is it's not quantitative. It tends to be somewhat subjective, right? You say you're depressed. What does that mean? Does that come up on a blood test? But you're exactly right. It's probably the most important thing that we need to tackle. And some of those references you made were kind of spot on. So it is wild though how nutrition can affect that. Like I was an athlete for 10 years, got hit in the head a lot. I was a professional boxer, and had all different types of diets and dealt with a handful of like mood swings, depression, all that kind of stuff. But for me personally, I did notice that when I would switch diets and play with different diets, it would help with my depression. It would help with mood. That was such a foreign concept to me years and years ago, to where all I knew was, okay, take an antidepressant and maybe don't get hit in the head. There just weren't like that many answers. And now we're learning so many answers, talking to these different experts and doctors. And it's really encouraging because it gives me hope, and I hope it gives other people hope too. And that's really what I want my life to be about, is instilling hope in other people. So we really appreciate you coming on the show, man. I learned a ton.
Well, thanks to Taco Bell and Oatly, you can do that.
Shout out Taco Bell and Oatly.
I'm staying away from oat milk. I'm staying away from oils, seed oils. I already do, but I'm going to even more so stay away.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. Cut it out.
Yeah, like I'm
Seed oils
98% there,
canceled.
but I want to be 100% there.
There it is.
Because I want to live to 150 and just be like thriving in my
Yeah.
field and my farm with my pigs.
Yeah.
Oh, this was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks.